Chapter 1. The Prince of Beverly Hills. Lucas Montgomery leaned back against the soft leather headrest of his midnight blue Lamborghini Aventador, the California sun glinting off his aviator sunglasses. His engine purred like a lion fed with gold, roaring proudly as he revved it at the red light near Rodeo Drive. A few tourists turned their heads in admiration. He smirked. "Let them look," he whispered under his breath. This is what royalty looks like. At 22, Lucas had it all. Or so he thought. The only son of Douglas and Diana Montgomery, billionaire investors and philanthropists, Lucas had never known what it meant to want or wait. Luxury was his norm. Every morning, a maid ironed his designer shirts, a private chef served his breakfast, and a driver stood ready to take him wherever he pleased, though he often preferred to speed through LA. Himself in one of his many sports cars. He was enrolled at Stanford, but rarely showed up. He had been suspended twice and was on thin ice, but that didn't matter to Lucas. His last name opened doors, and his father's lawyers closed consequences. "Stanford can survive without me," he joked to his friends at yet another rooftop party, champagne flowing like water. Besides, the real education is here, with the right people, in the right zip code. Lucas's circle laughed. They always laughed at his jokes, even the cruel ones. Even when he made fun of a waiter's accent. Or humiliated a shy girl who wore last season's shoes. He was charming when he wanted to be. Handsome, with chiseled features, tousled hair, and piercing green eyes. But behind that face was a young man drunk on power, high on ego, and bankrupt in empathy. His parents tried to intervene. His mother, Diana, once cornered him in the rose garden of their Beverly Hills estate. "Lucas, sweetheart, you can't keep doing this. Parties, fights, suspensions? You're losing yourself." He rolled his eyes, sipping from his iced espresso. "You're being dramatic, Mom. I'm just enjoying life. Isn't that what you and Dad worked for?" His father, Douglas, had been less gentle. "You think this world owes you something because you were born into it?" Douglas's voice boomed in the study. "I built this empire from scratch while eating ramen for dinner and working 2 jobs. You? You can't even show up to class." Lucas had laughed in his face. "Then maybe you should have stayed poor. Would have spared us all the lectures." That night, the household staff heard shouting. Then silence. Then the slamming of doors. For days, Douglas paced his office, his mind spinning. Something had to change. They had tried grounding, therapy, pulling allowances. Nothing worked. Lucas only grew bolder, colder, crueler. Until one morning, 3 weeks later, Lucas awoke to something that shattered his world. He stumbled out of bed around noon, still wearing yesterday's shirt. The taste of tequila bitter in his mouth. The house was eerily quiet. No smell of croissants. No fresh fruit platter. No staff. What the? He walked down the marble staircase. The foyer, usually lit with morning music and chatter, was dead silent. On the dining table sat a single envelope. "Lucas. Read immediately." He opened it, confused. "Lucas. There's no easy way to say this. Your father and I have lost everything. A series of failed investments, some we tried to shield you from, have finally caught up. The SEC is investigating. Accounts are frozen. The house is no longer ours. We must leave by tomorrow. We didn't want to burden you, but you're old enough now. We'll be moving into a small apartment in East LA. Your tuition has been canceled. The cars are gone. We have no staff. It's time we all learn to live differently. Mom." Lucas dropped the letter. His chest tightened. Was this some sort of prank? He grabbed his phone. "Call Dad." He barked at Siri. No answer. "Call Mom." Voicemail. He ran to the garage. The Lamborghini? Gone. The Ferrari? Gone. Only a dusty old Toyota Corolla remained, probably from the gardener. "Is this a joke?" he shouted into the empty garage. But it wasn't. His parents didn't come home that night. Instead, they sent a moving van with a single message. "We'll be at 4861 Boyle Avenue, East Los Angeles. See you soon." The address echoed in his mind like a curse. East LA? That was the part of town he and his friends joked about. The place you drove past with locked doors and rolled-up windows. Lucas didn't go. Not that day. Not the day after. He stayed with a party friend in Malibu, sure this would blow over. But his credit card stopped working. His phone was disconnected. His name, once a golden ticket, was now met with pity or indifference. 2 weeks later, Lucas stood outside a run-down apartment complex in East Los Angeles, a single duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He looked up at the peeling paint, the flickering hallway light, the kids playing barefoot on cracked concrete. And for the first time in his life, Lucas Montgomery felt afraid. Chapter 2: From Marble Floors to Cracked Concrete. Lucas hesitated before entering the building. The faint stench of mildew and old takeout clung to the stairwell, and the dim yellow bulb above him buzzed like an angry wasp. For a fleeting second, he turned to leave. But where would he go? His Malibu friend had kicked him out after the second unpaid pizza delivery. He took a breath, squared his shoulders, and climbed the creaky stairs to apartment 3B. The door opened before he could knock. His mother stood there, dressed in a simple t-shirt and jeans. No pearls. No makeup. Just lines of quiet exhaustion around her eyes. "Hi, Lucas," she said gently as if he were a stranger. He blinked. "Is this real?" She stepped aside. "Come in." The apartment was smaller than his childhood walk-in closet. A second-hand couch sat crookedly against one wall. A tiny kitchen with a dented fridge hummed beside it. His father sat at a wobbly dining table, eating instant noodles with a pair of cheap plastic chopsticks. Lucas stared. Douglas didn't look up. "Welcome home, son." "You can't be serious," Lucas said, his voice rising. This is beneath us." Douglas looked up now, his expression unreadable. "No, Lucas. This is reality. The world you refuse to see." Lucas laughed, but it was hollow. "Come on. Enough with the melodrama. Let's get back home. I'll apologize or whatever. Just stop this madness." Diana walked into the kitchen, filled a glass of tap water, and handed it to him. "This is home now." "No. No way." He backed toward the door. "I'm not living like some charity case." "We're not asking you to," Douglas said quietly. "You're free to leave. But if you stay, you contribute. Rent, groceries, work." Lucas scoffed. "You want me to get a job? Like, an actual job? What am I supposed to do? Wait tables? Clean floors?" Diana's gaze didn't flinch. "Exactly that." He laughed again, but it died in his throat. No one joined in. No staff appeared to offer alternatives. No car waited outside. The silence was heavier than any scream. "I'll stay one night," he muttered. "Then we're talking about how to fix this." No one replied. That night, Lucas lay on an old mattress on the floor of a small side room. The springs dug into his back. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. A couple shouted in Spanish 2 floors down. Someone banged pots at midnight. His phone was dead. His pride was shattered. And for the first time in years, Lucas felt invisible. The next morning, Diana woke him at 6 a.m. "There's a job fair at 7:30. We found a local program that helps people with no experience." He blinked. "Are you kidding?" She simply handed him a granola bar. "Wear something plain. No logos." By 8 o'clock, Lucas found himself in a rundown community center, surrounded by people who looked nothing like the polished circles he once moved in. He watched a single mom juggle 2 kids while filling out a job application. An older man with a faded tattoo on his neck gave Lucas a weary nod. He wanted to bolt. Instead, he filled out a form. The lady at the desk handed him a flyer. "Construction helper, no experience needed. Pay starts at $14 per hour. His hands trembled. $14. He used to spend more than that on a bottle of water at clubs. Still, he took the flyer. He didn't know why. Maybe it was shame. Maybe it was the empty look in his father's eyes. Maybe it was because, for once, no one here knew his name. 3 days later, Lucas stood in steel-toed boots that blistered his feet, holding a shovel under a sun that showed no mercy. Henry, a wiry man in his mid-20s, stood beside him. You ever done real work before? Henry asked, grinning as he handed Lucas a pair of gloves. Lucas tried to smirk. Define real. Henry laughed. Yeah, you're green. But don't worry. You'll either get strong or quit. The foreman yelled, and they moved to haul cinder blocks. Lucas lasted 20 minutes before his arms gave out. His back screamed. Sweat soaked through his shirt. Take a break, Henry offered. No shame in breathing. Lucas sat on a pile of gravel, humiliated. His fingers were raw. His pride bruised. And yet, there was something grounding about it all. No one cared who he was. No one praised or coddled him. His worth here depended on what he could carry, not what he could buy. As they packed up for the day, Henry clapped him on the back. Not bad for a rich boy, he said. Not unkindly. Lucas stared at him. How'd you know? Henry shrugged. Soft hands. Clean nails. Shoes too white. But you're still here. That counts for something. Lucas didn't reply. But for the first time in a long time, he didn't have a comeback. Only silence. And something strange stirring in his chest. Maybe this was exactly what he needed. Chapter 3, where no one knows his name. Lucas sat quietly at the dining table, nursing a glass of cold water with his blistered hands. His arms ached in ways he had never known. His back felt like it had carried bricks, because it literally had. The construction site had no shade, no comfort, and no mercy. Yet, oddly enough, there was something about the silence in this apartment that felt more honest than any conversation he'd had in years. Across from him, Douglas read a newspaper. Diana chopped vegetables in the tiny kitchen. There were no servants, no maids, no distant voices taking orders. Just the occasional clatter of a pan or the rustling of paper. Lucas broke the silence. I got through the whole shift. Douglas looked up. Did you quit? No. Douglas nodded and turned the page. Diana gave him a small smile. We're proud of you. He didn't know why. But the words hit deeper than they ever had in a mansion. The next morning, Lucas returned to the job site. His movements were slower now, more measured. Henry noticed. Muscle memory, he said, tossing Lucas a banana during their break. You'll stop hurting around week 2. Or you'll quit. Most rich kids quit. Lucas frowned. You keep saying that. How do you know I'm rich? Henry raised an eyebrow. You just asked that while drinking Fiji water from a bottle that costs $4 at 7-Eleven. Lucas flushed. I'm not judging, Henry added. Just saying, it doesn't matter here. You work hard, you're one of us. You slack off, no one cares who your daddy is. Lucas sat in silence, watching a middle-aged man named Jose pour concrete with the precision of a surgeon. He had seen his father sign million-dollar contracts with less focus than Jose gave that sidewalk. Who's the boss here? Lucas asked. Technically, the foreman. But really? The guy who sweats the least and listens the most. That night, Lucas couldn't sleep. Not from exhaustion, but from thought. He walked into the cramped living room where Douglas sat alone, staring at an old photo album. It was faded, filled with pictures from the early days, before the penthouses and private jets. Lucas saw a photo of his father standing outside a tiny hardware store, arms around Diana, both smiling like they'd won the world. You were poor once? Lucas asked quietly. Douglas didn't look up. We were broke. But not poor. Poor is a state of mind. Broke is temporary. Lucas sat beside him. I didn't know. You never asked. There was no bitterness in his voice. Just fact. Lucas stared at a photo of himself as a toddler in a cardboard box made to look like a race car. He had a wide grin and no concept of wealth. Only love. Why didn't you tell me about all this? Douglas shut the album gently. Because we thought protecting you meant hiding the struggle. That was our mistake. Lucas swallowed. I thought money made me better than people. That I didn't need to try. Douglas's eyes were kind but firm. And what do you think now? Lucas didn't answer. Not yet. He wasn't ready to say it aloud. But the answer was starting to form inside him, slow and painful like muscle after strain. The next day at the site, Lucas worked harder. He stopped complaining about the heat. He offered to sweep the truck bed after unloading bricks. He started asking Jose about tools, about technique. He stopped pretending to know everything. Henry raised his brow at lunch. "You're different today." Lucas shrugged. "Maybe I'm tired of being useless." Henry smiled. "That's a good kind of tired." Over the next week, Lucas began to wake up before his alarm. He packed his own lunch. He fixed the bent chair in the apartment without being asked. He even mopped the kitchen after dinner. One evening, Diana handed him a plate of food and said, "You look older." Lucas chuckled. "You mean dirtier?" "No," she said softly. "I mean wiser." He didn't respond. But that night, he looked at himself in the mirror, really looked. The boy who once laughed at others' struggles now had calluses. He smelled like dust and concrete. His expensive skincare was gone. But for the first time, he didn't hate the reflection. He almost respected it. One Friday afternoon, the foreman approached him as they wrapped up. "You've been showing up. On time. Working hard. You're not useless after all," he grunted. Lucas blinked. "Thanks. I guess. We got a training program starting next week, entry-level electrical work. If you want something more than just lifting bricks, sign up." Lucas stared at the form in his hand. For the first time, he saw something he hadn't expected to see since the so-called downfall began. A future. Chapter 4. Wiring the Future. The classroom smelled like whiteboard markers and dusty textbooks. Lucas sat near the back, unsure whether he belonged. Around him were men and women of all ages, some in their 20s like him, others in their 40s or 50s. Most wore worn boots and had hands calloused by years of labor. No one looked like the kind of people he used to party with. No one cared. And maybe that's why Lucas stayed. The instructor, a gruff woman named Ms. Carla, entered wearing jeans and a utility belt. "Welcome to the Level 1 electrical training program," she said, wasting no time. "This isn't college. I won't chase you. You miss a class, you're out. You slack off, you're out. But if you show up and work, we'll give you a trade you can build a life with." Lucas sat straighter. A trade. A life. It was the first time someone spoke to him not as a Montgomery, but as a man. After class, he rode the bus back to East LA, his boots tapping the sticky floor, his mind spinning with terms he barely understood: circuits, voltage, amperes. He looked out the window at the city passing by, not from behind the tinted glass of a limo, but through the scratched plastic pane of public transport. Back home, Douglas was reading again. A bowl of leftover rice in his lap. "How is it?" he asked without looking up. "Hard," Lucas said. "But kind of exciting." Douglas glanced up now. "Exciting?" Lucas nodded slowly. "It's weird. I felt useful. Like I could build something that wasn't just fake status." Douglas gave a rare smile. "That's how I felt when I built my first shed. It wasn't much, but it was mine." Lucas paused. "Why didn't you ever make me build anything?" His father sighed. "Because we thought giving you everything was love. But love's not about making life easy. It's about making it meaningful." Over the next few weeks, Lucas balanced work at the construction site with night classes. He spent less time checking social media and more time studying wiring diagrams. He stopped texting party girls and started watching YouTube videos about tools, electrical safety, and how to install outlets. He was still tired, still sore, but the exhaustion had a purpose. Every day, he got stronger. Not just in body, but in mindset. One rainy evening, Lucas was assigned to help wire a small community center downtown, a volunteer project run by a nonprofit. It wasn't paid, but it counted toward his training hours. That's where he saw her again. Alicia. She was standing at the front, handing out donated clothes to families in need. Her hair was tied up messily, her apron slightly stained with paint. Lucas's stomach twisted. He remembered Alicia from months ago, back when he was still Lucas Montgomery, king of sneers and sarcasm. She'd served him at a coffee shop once, and he'd mocked her accent. She'd just looked at him, hurt but silent. He walked up slowly. "Alicia?" She turned. Her eyes narrowed. "Do I know you?" He cleared his throat. "We met a while back. I wasn't very kind." She studied him. The rich guy who mocked my name because it sounded too waitress-y? He winced. Yeah, that guy. A long silence. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I was arrogant. I didn't know anything about real people. Or real life. Alicia's expression didn't soften immediately. But she didn't walk away either. And now? I'm trying to be someone different, he said. Someone who earns his place. She tilted her head. And this is part of that? He gestured toward the tools. Learning. Working. Trying. A beat passed. Then another. Finally, she said, good. Because the world doesn't need more charm. It needs more character. He nodded, a lump forming in his throat. As they worked on separate tasks, Lucas kept sneaking glances at Alicia, not out of infatuation, but out of respect. She had faced hardships he couldn't imagine and still gave. Still served. Still smiled. And he, Lucas Montgomery, heir to empires, was barely learning to stand on his own. That night, back at the apartment, Lucas opened his notebook and wrote for the first time in years. Day 47. Wired my first breaker box today. Got zapped once. Deserved it. Saw Alicia again. She remembers who I was, but maybe not who I'm becoming. I don't want to go back. For the first time. I'm proud to be me. Chapter 5, A New Name, A New Man. Lucas adjusted his hard hat and bent down to tighten a panel bolt on the breaker box. The buzzing hum of fluorescent lights filled the half-renovated room, mixing with the chatter of volunteers. It was the last day of work on the community center's rewiring project, and Lucas had been asked to lead the final inspection. Him. Lead. Just 3 months ago, he didn't know how to hold a wrench properly. Yo, boss, Henry called from across the room, grinning. You gonna approve my wiring, or should I just go apply at Starbucks? Lucas laughed. Only if you promise to spell everyone's name wrong on purpose. Henry walked over and bumped shoulders with him. Look at you, man. You were all soft hands and designer watches. Now you're practically blue-collar royalty. Lucas smirked. Don't get used to it. I'm still not eating gas station sushi with you. Yet, Henry said, raising an eyebrow. Lucas couldn't deny the change anymore. His muscles were real now. The soreness came from effort, not gym selfies. His confidence no longer came from what he wore, but from what he could do. His once pristine hands were scarred and rough, but they built things. Wired things. Fixed things. They meant something now. Later that afternoon, as he packed up the van, he saw Alicia again, this time without her apron. She wore a simple blue hoodie and jeans, hair tied in a bun, cheeks pink from the wind. You're still here, she asked. He smiled. Thought I'd stay and help the next crew settle in. She nodded, thoughtful. You've changed. Lucas looked down. I'm trying to. Alicia folded her arms. Why? He looked up at her, surprised. I mean, she added, you could have left. Rich kid loses everything, has a few bad weeks, then finds a way to bounce back. But you didn't. You stayed. He took a moment before answering. Because the old me was empty, he said slowly. I had noise, but not purpose. Now, every time I wire a room or help someone get power back, it feels like I'm finally part of something that matters. Alicia gave him a small, approving smile. Good answer. He dared to ask. And what about you? What about me? Do you think someone like me could, eventually earn your respect? She tilted her head. Respect isn't earned in one conversation. It's earned in 100 small choices. You're on your way. Lucas nodded. That was more than enough for now. That evening, Lucas walked home from the bus stop instead of catching a ride. The air was crisp and the sidewalk glistened from an earlier rain. He passed by stores he once ignored, family-owned groceries, auto repair shops, a laundromat glowing with warm yellow light. He saw life everywhere. Struggle, yes, but also dignity. And he wanted to be part of it. When he arrived at the apartment, Diana was in the kitchen making rice and beans. Douglas sat nearby, typing something on an old laptop. Smells good, Lucas said, dropping his tool bag by the door. His mother smiled. We're celebrating. He raised an eyebrow. Celebrating what? Douglas looked up. You. Lucas froze. Me? Diana handed him a manila envelope. Inside was a certificate. Completion of Level 1 Electrical Systems, Community Vocational Program. Beneath it, a typed letter. Lucas Montgomery has been recommended for apprentice-level placement with the LA Trade and Utilities Board. Lucas stared, speechless. Douglas stood and placed a hand on his son's shoulder. We knew you had it in you. You just needed to earn it yourself. Lucas swallowed hard. I didn't do it alone. His mother stepped forward. That's the best part. You finally understand that. Later that night, Lucas sat on the small balcony, legs propped on a plastic chair, sipping weak coffee and watching the lights of the city flicker like stars. He pulled out his phone, finally reconnected now that he had a prepaid plan, and opened his notes app. New goals. Finish Level 2 certification. Apply for paid apprenticeship. Pay first rent share. Replace mom's broken toaster. Tell dad he was right. Earn Alicia's trust. Start from the ground. Build something real. He hit save and smiled. He didn't need to be the Prince of Beverly Hills anymore. He was fine being Lucas Montgomery, apprentice electrician, proud son, better man. And maybe, just maybe, something more. Chapter 6. Lessons from the Ground Up. Lucas's boots thudded softly against the concrete as he entered the LA Trade and Utilities Board training facility. He clutched a folder under his arm, his application for an apprentice-level placement, and a bundle of nerves sat heavy in his chest. The waiting room was filled with other hopefuls. Young men in plaid shirts and scuffed jeans, women with braided hair and steel-toed boots, older workers retraining after layoffs. It was quiet, save for the occasional nervous cough and the distant hum of vending machines. A door opened. A man in a button-down shirt called, Lucas Montgomery? Lucas stood. As he walked toward the interview room, he heard his last name spoken behind him in a whisper. Montgomery? Like the investment firm. He didn't turn around. He didn't need to. He used to love that name, that weight. Now he carried it differently, quietly, humbly. Inside the small conference room sat a panel of three, a wiry older man with glasses, a no-nonsense woman in a utility uniform, and a third man who barely looked up from his clipboard. Have a seat, the woman said. I'm Gloria. This is Tom and Brian. Let's talk about your application. Lucas nodded and sat down. Your file says you've completed Level 1 training and worked on a volunteer rewiring project at the community center, Gloria began. Tell us why you want to pursue this path. Lucas took a breath. Because I used to think working with your hands meant you'd failed. That it was something people did because they didn't have options. But now I know this kind of work isn't about failure. It's about building, fixing, creating something real. The panel was silent for a moment. Tom leaned forward. Your background is interesting. Montgomery isn't a name we see often in our files. Lucas held his gaze. I'm not here because of that name. I'm here because of what I've done without it. Gloria smiled faintly. That's the right answer. They asked him about wiring regulations, tool safety, circuit tracing. He answered with clarity. Not perfect, but honest. He didn't pretend to be an expert. He admitted when he didn't know something and explained how he'd learned from mistakes. At the end, Gloria said, You'll hear from us within the week. Lucas stood. Thank you for the opportunity. As he exited the room, he felt a strange stillness. He had no idea if he'd passed, but for the first time, the outcome didn't define him. The effort did. That night, as Lucas walked home through the neighborhood, he passed a small grocery store where an elderly man was struggling to lift a box of canned goods from his trunk. Without hesitation, Lucas jogged over. Need a hand, sir? The man blinked, startled, then nodded. Back's not what it used to be. Lucas lifted the box with ease, carried it into the shop, and placed it gently on the counter. Thank you, the man said, adjusting his glasses. What's your name? Lucas, he replied. Lucas what? He smiled. Just Lucas. The old man chuckled. You raised right, Lucas? Lucas thought for a moment. Not always, but I'm getting there. Back at the apartment, he found Diana mending a torn sleeve at the tiny dinner table. You're home early, she said. He nodded. Interview's done. She looked up. How do you feel? Clean, he said. Not in the physical way. In the I didn't lie my way through it kind of way. Diana smiled. That's called integrity. Lucas sat beside her. Was I really that bad before? She didn't answer right away. You weren't bad. You were lost in noise. In the illusion that money equals meaning. And now? She gently touched his hand. Now. I see you again. The real you. 3 days later, the letter arrived. Lucas stared at the envelope for a full minute before opening it. His hands were steady, his heartbeat not so much. Congratulations, Mr. Montgomery. You have been accepted into the LA Trade and Utilities Apprenticeship Program. Your first assignment begins Monday. Report to the South District office at 6 a.m. Lucas didn't shout, didn't run through the apartment. He just let out a deep, grateful breath. Then he picked up the phone. Henry, he said when his friend answered. Yo, what's up? I got in. Henry hooped. My man. Drinks on you tonight, unless you're too proud to go to a place that sells tacos for $1. Lucas grinned. Tacos sound perfect. That night, under a string of flickering patio lights behind a tiny taqueria, Lucas and Henry clinked soda bottles together. To jobs that actually matter, Henry said. To lives that we build, Lucas replied. They drank, they laughed, and for the first time in Lucas's life, the future felt like something he could touch, not something he was handed. And it tasted nothing like champagne. Chapter 7. The 6 a.m. Life. The alarm buzzed at 4:45 a.m. Lucas groaned, his hand fumbling through the dark to silence it. The old ceiling fan spun lazily overhead, casting faint shadows across the small room. For a moment, he lay there, staring at the cracked ceiling, the echo of his past life whispering to him like a ghost. Silk sheets, blackout curtains. A private chef waiting downstairs with espresso and fresh croissants. Instead, today, he would be the one sweating over wires in utility shafts and crawling under foundations before the sun even broke the horizon. And he didn't mind. He got up, made a cup of instant coffee, and packed his own lunch, peanut butter sandwiches, a banana, and a bottle of water. Nothing fancy. Just fuel. By 5:30 a.m., he was already at the bus stop. Wearing a thick hoodie over his work shirt and carrying his new tool bag, one he'd bought with the money he earned from weekend shifts. The bus rumbled into view. He stepped on, nodded to the driver, and slid into a seat near the back. The city was still half asleep. Streetlights flickered. The early morning crowd, nurses, janitors, delivery drivers, sat in silence, each person tucked into their own rhythm of survival. Lucas looked out the window, his breath fogging the glass. He wasn't part of the elite anymore. But for once, he felt like he belonged. The South District Utility Office was nothing impressive, just a cluster of squat buildings surrounded by parked service trucks and chain-link fences. The air smelled like diesel, wet concrete, and early sweat. Inside, he was greeted by a clipboard and a woman in a bright orange vest named Tanya. Apprentice Montgomery? She asked, checking her list. Lucas hesitated. Just Lucas is fine. She raised a brow. All right, just Lucas. You're with Crew 7 today. You're riding with Jorge and Malik. Stick close. Don't touch anything unless told. Got it. Tanya pointed toward a truck where 2 men stood loading gear. One was tall and built like a linebacker, the other wiry and sharp-eyed. Morning, newbie, the big one, Jorge said. Hope you had a solid breakfast. We got a full shift of trench work. Lucas offered his hand. Lucas. Thanks for having me. Malik gave him a nod. You listen, you learn, you sweat, you'll do fine. They hit the road before 6:15, the sun rising behind them as the city came to life. Their first assignment was in Watts, an old building with outdated electrical lines and half the wiring corroded by water damage. Jorge handed Lucas a headlamp and gloves. Today, you pull old cable from the wall. Tomorrow, maybe we let you run new ones. Lucas nodded. Sounds good. The crawl space was tight, dark, and smelled like rust and dust. Lucas felt the press of the earth above him, his shoulders scraping against the beams. Each time he tugged on a cable, dirt rained down, coating his shirt and arms. By noon, his forearms burned and his knees ached. But he didn't complain. He listened. He worked. He sweated. During lunch, they sat on the back of the truck bed, legs dangling, eating sandwiches in silence. Jorge broke it first. Word is you used to be some kind of rich kid. Lucas didn't flinch. I was. Malik smirked. So what happened? Daddy cut you off. Lucas shrugged. Worse. They made me work. The men chuckled. Lucas smiled. But it was the best thing they ever did, he added. Jorge looked him over. Well, you're doing okay for a rich boy. Just don't expect anyone to care about your last name here. I don't, Lucas said simply. I left that part behind. They nodded. That was all that needed to be said. By the end of the day, Lucas's shirt was soaked through, his hands red and raw, his boots caked in mud. He looked nothing like the boy who once sat front row at fashion shows. And yet, he felt taller. Not in stature, but in spirit. When he got home, Diana handed him a towel and a warm smile. You look like you got hit by a truck, she said. Lucas grinned, wiping his face. More like a utility van. Douglas chuckled from the couch. Did they haze you or hire you? Both, Lucas said, collapsing into the kitchen chair. And I loved every minute of it. He reached for the rice cooker. Is there more food? I'm starving. Diana beamed. Help yourself. They sat together, eating simple food, sharing stories from the day. No grand chandeliers. No silverware polished to perfection. Just family. And Lucas realized this was the dinner he'd never had because for the first time, he had earned it. Chapter 8. The First Shock. By the end of Lucas's second week as an apprentice, his body had adapted more than he'd expected. The bruises were fewer, the soreness more tolerable, and his instincts sharper. He knew where to step, when to duck, how to coil wires faster than before. And, most importantly, how to stay out of the way when things got serious. But nothing prepared him for his first real mistake. That Thursday started out like any other cool morning air. Quiet bus ride, jokes from Jorge, Malik's playlist humming low in the service van. They were assigned to a residential rewiring job in Inglewood, an older home being prepped for solar installation. Their task was to trace and relabel a tangle of outdated circuits and prep a breaker box for replacement. Lucas had done breaker prep in class. He felt ready. They split tasks. And Lucas was told to check continuity on a specific circuit that ran from the living room to the garage. Breakers off, Jorge said, double-checking. Still, always test before touching. Remember the rule. The panel lies. You hear me? Lucas nodded. He thought he'd tested the wire with the voltmeter correctly. He hadn't. The moment he touched the exposed copper wire with the metal edge of his screwdriver, a loud pop cracked through the quiet. A violent jolt shot up his arm, throwing him backward into the drywall. Lucas hit the floor hard. His ears rang. His vision blurred. For a few terrifying seconds, he couldn't breathe. Jorge and Malik were at his side in an instant. Don't move, Malik barked. I'm fine. Lucas wheezed, even as his chest burned and his right hand throbbed. Jorge cursed under his breath. You're lucky, man. Could have been worse. That was 120 volts. If you'd touched a wet surface. Lucas sat up slowly, dazed. I checked it. I thought it was off. You thought, Jorge growled, pointing a finger at him. You don't think in this job. You test properly. You ground. You verify. Electricity doesn't forgive mistakes. It kills people. Malik helped him to his feet. No burns. Just a hell of a lesson. Lucas nodded. Shame rising like acid in his throat. Jorge softened. It happens. Even to the best. But now you know, this isn't theory anymore. This is life and death. Back at the apartment. Lucas stared at his bandaged hand. A shallow cut from where he hit the floor. Nothing serious. But the jolt still echoed in his bones. Diana sat across from him, silently placing a cup of warm tea on the table. He looked up, eyes hollow. I could have died today. She didn't flinch. But you didn't. He nodded, tears burning at the corners of his eyes. It was my fault. It was a mistake, she said. A painful one, but not fatal. And now you'll remember. He took a long sip of tea. I don't deserve this second chance. Not after everything I've thrown away. Diana reached across the table, placing her hand gently over his. We didn't give you a second chance, Lucas. You took it. You walked into that site. You got on that bus. You stayed when it was hard. That wasn't us. That was you. His voice broke. I don't want to go back to who I was. You won't, she said softly. Because now you know how it feels to build something. The next morning, Lucas returned to work. He was quiet, focused. No jokes. No pride. He brought his own multimeter. Triple-checked every circuit. Asked questions without shame. At lunch, Jorge passed him a sandwich. You all right? Lucas nodded. Yeah, I won't make that mistake again. Malik added. None of us got out of training without getting zapped. You're officially one of us now. Lucas chuckled. It's like a rite of passage? Jorge raised his soda can. To surviving your first shock and still showing up. They clinked cans. And just like that, Lucas knew he belonged. Not because he was wealthy. Not because he was perfect. But because he was learning, failing, and rising again. Just like everyone else. Chapter 9. Small Wins, Big Steps. The following week brought a wave of calm Lucas hadn't felt in years. Not luxury. Not ease. But clarity. Every morning began the same. 4:45 a.m. alarm, instant coffee, bus ride through the waking city, and steel-toed boots crunching gravel outside the South District Utility Office. The routine became his rhythm. His breathing. His anchor. What once felt punishing was now grounding. He was learning to measure progress not in likes or luxury, but in the precision of a clean wire splice, the quiet pride in a job done right, and the way his coworkers nodded at him with respect instead of amusement. On Wednesday, something small, but important, happened. Jorge and Malik were rerouting conduit in a cramped basement. The foreman had called in sick, so they were behind schedule. Tension was thick. Lucas was tasked with setting up the new breaker panel, a task he'd been quietly studying for days. He laid out the tools, reviewed the circuit map, triple-checked voltages, then stepped forward. I can mount the panel, he said. Malik gave him a look. You sure? Lucas nodded. I know the anchor points. And the voltage is dead. I already tested with 2 meters. Jorge watched him for a beat. All right. Show us what you got. Lucas worked in silence. Clean lines. Tight connections. No wasted movement. He used every tip Jorge and Malik had given him over the past month. When he finished, he stood back, heart pounding. The 2 men inspected his work. No jokes. No teasing. Just a quiet, approving grunt from Jorge. You're ready for more, Malik said. Lucas smiled, his chest swelling not with pride, but purpose. That evening, back at the apartment, Diana was grading community college papers at the kitchen table. Lucas dropped his backpack by the door and opened the fridge. You want tea? He asked. She looked up, pleasantly surprised. Yes, please. He boiled water, dropped in 2 tea bags, and sat across from her. Guess what happened today, he said, unable to hide the grin tugging at his mouth. You got promoted to electrician-in-chief and saved Los Angeles from a blackout, she teased. Lucas laughed. Close. I installed my first full panel. No mistakes. Jorge and Malik actually said I was ready for real assignments. Diana beamed. Lucas, that's amazing. He nodded. I've never been this tired, but it's the best kind of tired. She paused, studying his face. You're changing. Every day. Lucas looked down at his hands, still rough, still scarred, but steadier. I feel different, he said. I used to think success was something people just inherited or bought. But now I get it. It's not about being at the top. It's about climbing, knowing you've earned each step. Diana reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Your father will want to hear that. Lucas smiled. I'll tell him tonight. Later, Lucas found Douglas on the small balcony, sipping black coffee, staring into the cityscape. Lucas joined him, taking the other chair. I wired a whole panel today, he said. Did it by the book. No corrections needed. Douglas raised his eyebrows. That's real work. Lucas nodded. It felt good. Like I finally built something that can stay. A pause passed between them, soft and steady. I also realized something. Lucas added. All those years when you tried to talk to me about discipline, values, respect, I thought you were trying to control me. Douglas looked over. But you weren't, Lucas continued. You were trying to prepare me. Douglas said nothing for a long time. Then, you wouldn't have heard it back then. You had to live it to believe it. Lucas leaned back. Well, I'm living it now. And I finally get why you let me fall. Douglas's eyes glinted. We didn't let you fall, son. We stepped back so you could learn how to stand. That weekend. Lucas stopped by the community center again. Not to work. Just to visit. Alicia was there, sorting boxes of canned food for the pantry. When she saw him, she smiled, but not out of politeness. This time, it was genuine. Back for more wiring, she asked. Just wanted to see if you'd let me help carry those. She handed him a heavy box without hesitation. What happened to the guy who wouldn't touch cardboard if it didn't come from Cartier? He chuckled. He got electrocuted. Had to start over. They walked side by side down the hallway. His hands steady beneath the weight. You've changed, she said again, softer this time. Lucas looked at her. I'm still changing. But I'm proud of that now. She gave a slow nod. Good. Because the world doesn't need you to be perfect. Just real. And Lucas smiled, feeling, for the first time, not just like he belonged in this life, but like he was meant for it. Chapter 10, One Brick at a Time. Lucas's breath formed soft clouds in the morning chill as he walked toward the construction site. It was Saturday, technically his day off, but he had volunteered to help a local housing project install wiring for a new duplex being built for low-income families. He didn't need the hours. He wanted them. When he arrived, the crew was already hard at work, hammering, sawing, calling out measurements over the buzzing of drills. The air smelled of sawdust and cement. Lucas pulled on his gloves and grabbed his tool belt, falling in step without a word. No one questioned why he was there. They knew him now. He belonged. Around noon, the project manager, an older man named Vince, approached him while he was routing a bundle of wiring through a new frame. You always this eager to give up a weekend? Vince asked with a raised eyebrow. Lucas wiped sweat from his brow. These people deserve a solid home. If I can be part of that, I'm in. Vince chuckled. Most of our guys do it for the tax write-off. Lucas smiled. I do it to sleep better. Vince clapped him on the shoulder. That's the kind of electrician I want on my team. Lucas blinked. Are you offering me a job? Apprentice slots open next quarter. Paid. Full-time. If you keep showing up like this, consider your name at the top of my list. Lucas nodded slowly. A wave of warmth spreading through his chest. Thank you. I won't let you down. I know, Vince said. That's why I said it. That evening, Lucas returned home dirtier and more exhausted than usual, but buzzing with something deeper than adrenaline. As he walked into the apartment, he found both his parents sitting on the couch. Diana was knitting. Douglas was reading the paper. The whole scene felt peaceful. Lucas dropped his bag by the door and flopped down onto the armchair, grinning. Guess what? You won the lottery. Diana teased. Better, he said. I got offered a real job. Full-time, paid. Starts next quarter if I stay consistent. Douglas set down his paper. That's fantastic, son. Lucas ran his fingers through his hair. It's wild. I used to fake resumes and charm my way through things. Now I'm actually earning my place. Slowly, one brick at a time. There was pride in his father's eyes. The kind Lucas had once tried so hard to force and now had finally earned. Later that night, Lucas stepped onto the tiny balcony, watching the city lights shimmer in the distance. The skyline used to represent everything he had, now it reminded him of everything he was becoming. Alicia's voice echoed in his mind. The world doesn't need perfect. Just real. He smiled. Pulled out his phone. Opened a new note. Day 67. Was offered my first real job today. I didn't expect it. I wasn't angling for it. But maybe that's the point. Maybe when you finally stop performing and start living, the world meets you halfway. He closed the note and looked up at the sky. No fireworks. No champagne. Just quiet stars and the sound of traffic far below. And somehow, that was enough. Chapter 11. Truth in the Silence. 2 months had passed. Lucas now moved with the steady confidence of someone who had found his rhythm, not just in work, but in life. His days were full of motion, of sweat, of progress. And his nights were filled with something he used to avoid. Stillness. Not the anxious kind, but the kind that comes when a man knows he's on the right path. He had continued volunteering on weekends, clocked in every weekday for his apprenticeship with Vince's crew, and passed the Level 2 certification exam with flying colors. He even saved enough to buy a second-hand pickup truck, a dented old Chevy that rattled on corners, but felt like freedom. Most nights, he and Alicia would talk after their respective shifts. Sometimes she'd call on her walk home from the diner where she worked part-time. Other nights, they'd meet at the local cafe, splitting cheap fries and talking about nothing in particular. Lucas never pushed. He was rebuilding more than just wiring. He was rebuilding trust in himself, in the world, in the relationships he'd once carelessly burned. And Alicia, in her quiet, grounded way, had become his anchor. One evening, while driving home from a late shift, Lucas noticed the lights out in an entire row of apartment buildings off Olympic Boulevard. His instincts kicked in. He pulled over, knocked on the manager's door, and offered to help. It wasn't his jurisdiction, and he wasn't fully licensed yet, but he knew how to troubleshoot. After getting the green light, he traced the issue to a fried outdoor breaker box, patched a safe temporary fix, and scheduled a full replacement with the city the next day. The next morning, his phone buzzed with a message from the city utility department. Community report mentioned you by name. Impressive initiative. Let's talk career development. Lucas stared at the screen, then smiled. He didn't chase the spotlight this time, but it found him anyway. At home that evening, Lucas sat at the dinner table with his parents. A simple meal, roast chicken, salad, warm rolls. Douglas poured 3 glasses of sparkling cider. To Lucas. Lucas raised an eyebrow. What are we toasting? Diana answered softly. To the man you've become. Lucas blushed. I haven't done anything spectacular. Douglas shook his head. No, you've done something better. What's that? You changed. Silence settled over them like a soft blanket. Comfortable. Earned. Then Douglas added, and since you've shown that you can stand, I think it's time we tell you the truth. Lucas stiffened. What truth? Diana took his hand. We never went bankrupt. Lucas blinked. What? Douglas nodded. There was no SEC investigation. No frozen accounts. No court orders. It was all staged. He couldn't speak. Diana continued. We saw you slipping through our fingers. You were angry, reckless, cruel, and unreachable. So we did the only thing left. We took it all away, Douglas said. Or made it look like we did. Lucas's fork clattered onto the plate. He stood. Took a step back. You lied to me? We gave you the gift of rock bottom, his father said gently. And you turned it into solid ground. Lucas's mind swirled with memories, his first miserable shift. Sleeping on a mattress on the floor, getting shocked by a wire, eating peanut butter sandwiches, the humbling, the rebuilding. He looked at them, voice trembling. So none of it was real? Diana's eyes brimmed. Everything you did was real. The pain, the growth, the work. You sitting here at this table, that's realer than anything money ever gave you. Silence stretched. Lucas turned away, gripping the edge of the counter, his breathing shallow. He didn't know whether to scream or cry. But then he looked at his hands. Rough. Earned. Strong. And he remembered Alicia's voice. Respect is earned in 100 small choices. He took a deep breath, then turned back around. I'm not angry, he said slowly. I thought I would be, but I'm not. Douglas and Diana exchanged a glance. I just need time to absorb it. Diana stepped forward. You can take all the time you need. We're here. Lucas sat back down. Don't get me wrong. That was one hell of a stunt. Douglas chuckled. We were desperate. Lucas smiled, despite everything. Yeah, I guess I was too. That night, Lucas sat alone in his truck, parked outside Alicia's building. He didn't call, didn't text. He just stared up at her window, a single light glowing in the dark. Then he opened his notes app. Day 94. They lied to save me. But maybe, sometimes, a well-placed lie opens the door to an honest life. I'm not who I used to be. And that's what matters most. He hit save, put the phone down, and smiled. Chapter 12. The Choice to Stay. Lucas hadn't spoken to his parents in 2 days. Not out of anger, but reflection. He went to work as usual, greeted his crew, climbed ladders, pulled wires, made jokes with Jorge and Malik, and earned his sweat the honest way. But behind the calm surface, his thoughts churned like live wires beneath a cracked panel. They hadn't gone bankrupt. They never lost the mansion. They never lost the cars. They never lost him. They just pretended to, hoping he'd find his way back. And he had. But now, the question hung in the air. What next? He stood at a crossroads, between two versions of himself. On Friday afternoon, Lucas walked into the Montgomery estate for the first time in nearly 4 months. It looked untouched. Manicured hedges, gleaming marble floors, the faint scent of lemon polish in the entry hall. Staff stood at attention, some offering awkward, uncertain smiles. Welcome back, sir, the housekeeper said softly. Lucas nodded. Just Lucas, please. His footsteps echoed as he entered the main living room. It felt too large now, too quiet. The stillness no longer comforted him, it unnerved him. His father was waiting by the fireplace, a glass of wine in hand. You came, Douglas said. Lucas folded his arms. I needed to see it. All of it. Douglas nodded. And? Lucas looked around. It's beautiful. It's also not home. Silence. Douglas placed his wine on the mantel. You don't have to choose between the two. You can have both. No, Lucas said gently. That's the problem. I don't want both. Douglas tilted his head. I don't want to slip back into being someone who thinks comfort is earned just by existing. I want to keep earning my life. Douglas didn't argue. He simply nodded. I respect that. Lucas exhaled. I'll visit. But I'm not moving back. I figured you'd say that. They stood in a quiet moment, not as father and son in conflict, but as two men who finally understood each other. Later that evening, Lucas drove to Alicia's diner. He didn't call ahead. He just slid into the last booth and waited. She appeared 10 minutes later, balancing 2 plates, her hair tied back, apron slightly stained. When she saw him, she smiled, but it was cautious. He stood as she approached. Hey yourself, she said, setting the plates down at another table. Didn't expect you tonight. I needed to see someone who never lied to me. She raised an eyebrow and slid into the booth across from him. That bad? He shook his head. Not bad. Just complicated. He told her everything about the staged bankruptcy, the pretend downfall, the lie that had set him free. When he finished, she leaned back, arms crossed. So, what are you going to do with that truth? Lucas looked her in the eyes. I'm going to keep showing up. Keep working. Keep choosing this life, every day. And maybe, if I'm lucky, keep having you in it. She smiled softly. I think that's the first honest thing you've ever said without rehearsing it in your head. He laughed. Probably true. They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the diner wrapping around them like a familiar blanket. Then Alicia said, You know what I respect most? What? You didn't have to stay. You chose to. Lucas met her gaze. Every single day. That night, Lucas returned to his modest East LA apartment. The furniture was mismatched, the faucet still dripped, and the walls carried the sound of a neighbor's television. But he kicked off his boots, washed the day's grit from his hands, and settled into the worn couch like a king who had finally claimed his own throne. No mansion. No applause. No spotlight. Just peace. and the steady, quiet satisfaction of a man who'd stopped pretending and started living. Chapter 13. Worth More Than Gold. The Monday morning sky was a dull gray, threatening rain. Lucas zipped up his jacket and stepped out of his apartment with a thermos of cheap coffee in one hand and his worn-out tool bag in the other. His old Chevy pickup sputtered to life like it always did, reluctantly, then loyally. Today wasn't a regular job. Vince had called the night before and asked him to lead a small training session for incoming apprentices. Just the basics, he'd said. But they'll listen to you. You've walked it. Lucas had hesitated. Me? Led? Then he remembered the first time he held a wire wrong and nearly got himself killed. The first time someone had shown him patience, not pity. The first time Jorge had said, "You're ready for more." Maybe now it was his turn to pass that torch. The room at the utility training center was filled with fresh faces, eager, anxious, tired. Hopeful. A few looked at him like he didn't belong there. He could see it in their eyes. Too clean. Too young. Too calm. He knew that look. He'd worn it once himself. Lucas cleared his throat. "I'm Lucas. I started where you were not that long ago. I was clueless, cocky, and thought hard work was something people did when they had no other options." A few chuckles. One head nodded. "But I learned something," he continued. "This trade? It's not a fallback. It's not failure. It's foundation. And if you let it, it will build you, not just pay you." He stepped over to the demonstration panel and picked up a set of wire cutters. This isn't about wiring buildings. It's about wiring your mindset. You want a shortcut? Go home. You want a paycheck without sweat? There are easier jobs. But if you want to walk into a room knowing you can light it up, stay. And give it everything. The room was silent. Then someone clapped. Then another. And suddenly, the applause wasn't for a speech, it was for themselves. For the journey ahead. Lucas smiled. "That's what I came here to spark." After the session, as he packed up, a young guy approached him. "Hey," he said, nervously. "You really used to be rich?" Lucas chuckled. "Still am, technically." The guy blinked. "Then why were you doing this?" Lucas thought for a moment. "Because being rich never taught me what value feels like. This job did." The guy nodded, a little awed, a little confused, but something clicked. Lucas added, "Your worth isn't in what you have. It's in what you can do when no one's watching and no one's handing you the answers." The guy looked down at his gloves. "I want to be good at this." "You will be," Lucas said, slapping him lightly on the shoulder. "If you keep showing up." That evening, Lucas was cleaning up wiring diagrams when a notification buzzed on his phone. "Incoming transfer. $10,000. 00. From Montgomery Trust." A message below. "Just in case you want to move back. We saved your old room. Mom and Dad." Lucas stared at the screen. $10,000. 2 months ago. He would have spent that on a watch he didn't need. Now it was enough to fix his truck, pay rent for half a year, or invest in tools to start his own business. He typed a reply. "Thanks, Mom. But I already have a room I earned. I'll be okay." He thought for a moment, then added, "I'm more than okay. I'm proud." Later, Alicia met him for a walk down the block. The air was crisp after a short rain. Their sneakers scuffed the wet pavement. The sky was clearing. "I heard about your speech," she said, bumping her shoulder into his. Lucas smiled. "Yeah? I was shaking the whole time. You hide it well." They walked in silence for a few moments. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "The mansion? The staff? The credit cards?" She nodded. Lucas looked up at the stars just starting to peek through the clouds. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But not like I used to. Now, I miss my hammer when I forget it. I miss my crew when they're off rotation. I miss quiet mornings and real conversations." Alicia stopped, turned to him. "You're not the same person." "No," he said softly. "But I like this version." She reached for his hand. "So do I." Chapter 14. One Nail, One Future. It was nearly 5:30 a.m. when Lucas pulled up outside a quiet lot on the edge of East Los Angeles. The property was bare dirt and cracked concrete, fenced in with bent metal and patched chain links. A faded sign swung in the wind. Community Youth Workshop, closed until further notice. Lucas stepped out of his truck, staring at the lot like it was already alive. He pulled a crumpled sketch from his back pocket. It wasn't drawn by an architect, just a rough layout. A tool shed here. Benches under a canopy there. A teaching space in the back with open-air wiring panels for practice. His dream had taken shape slowly, one shift at a time. It started with a question Alicia had asked weeks ago over coffee. If you could build anything, just for you, not for money, what would it be? And Lucas had answered without thinking. A space for kids like me. The ones no one expects anything from. Now, that space was becoming real. He locked eyes with the old building one last time and whispered, "You're gonna help someone grow." By 9 a.m., the crew arrived. Not Jorge or Malik this time, though they'd promised to help on weekends, but a new set of volunteers, young apprentices, a few high school dropouts, and a couple of single moms Lucas had met through Alicia's community center. People who had never swung a hammer before, but showed up anyway. Lucas stood in front of them with a clipboard, hard hat tucked under one arm. Today, he said, we're not just putting up walls. We're tearing down everything that ever told us we weren't good enough. A cheer went up, tentative at first. Then stronger. Work began. Lucas moved from team to team, showing someone how to drill anchor bolts into concrete, guiding another on framing a wall. He climbed, lifted, measured, encouraged. Sweat poured. Blisters formed. And something beautiful began to rise. By the end of the week, a skeleton of the workshop stood proudly beneath the afternoon sun. The tool shed was finished, and volunteers were sanding down benches to place under the half-constructed awning. Alicia arrived carrying boxed lunches for the whole crew. Lucas met her at the fence, wiping his hands on his jeans. "You built this," she said, handing him a sandwich. "We're building it," he corrected. "All of us." She looked around. "This isn't just a workshop. It's a second chance." Lucas nodded. "For everyone." He looked toward the corner of the lot, where two teenage boys were hammering studs into place with clumsy hands and stubborn pride. Especially them. That evening, Lucas sat with Douglas and Diana at a local diner. No white linens, no waiters in suits, just cracked booths and warm lights. He had invited them there for a reason. So, he began. Passing his phone across the table, "I got approval from the city to finish the space. Permits are cleared. It's going to be called the Breaker Box." Diana scrolled through photos of the construction progress. Her eyes lit up. Douglas studied the sketchpad Lucas had also brought, detailing his teaching goals, outreach programs, and apprentice-led sessions for teens. "You're using your name for this?" Douglas asked. Lucas shook his head. "No. I want it to stand on its own. No Montgomery legacy. Just a place built by people who needed one." Douglas leaned back, nodding slowly. "You've become more of a man than I ever hoped for." Lucas looked down at his hands. "Because you stopped saving me." "No," Diana said softly. "Because you started saving yourself." That night, Lucas wrote again in his phone. Not in his notes app, but in an email, drafted and ready for Alicia to read someday. Subject: why I chose to stay. I chose to stay not because I had to, but because I finally saw something worth staying for. I'm not afraid of being ordinary anymore. I'm afraid of being disconnected from people, from purpose, from who I've worked so hard to become. I'll never be the same boy I was in Beverly Hills. And that's the best thing that ever happened to me. He hit save as draft. Not everything needed to be sent right away. Some truths just needed to be written. Chapter 15. The Man in the Mirror. Lucas stood in front of the large bathroom mirror at the community center. The space was quiet, the morning sun slanting in through the dusty glass above the sink. He washed the last traces of sawdust and grime from his hands, watching as the water turned gray, then clear. He looked up at his reflection. It was the same face, but it wasn't. His jaw was firmer now, not from genetics, but from grit. His eyes held a calm steadiness, like someone who had weathered something real and come through better, not bitter. There were scars on his knuckles, calluses where there once were manicures. And for the first time in his life, He didn't feel like he had to prove anything to the man in the mirror. He simply nodded. You earned this. The breaker box opened 2 weeks later. It wasn't grand. No ribbon cutting. No press. Just a crowd of families, apprentices, teens, and old coworkers who showed up in dusty boots and goodwill. The sign, painted by local kids, read, "The Breaker Box. Start something real." Lucas gave a short speech. Nothing dramatic. He told them the truth, that he used to believe success was inherited, that respect could be bought, and that failure was something to run from. But now he knew success had to be earned. Respect was built. And failure? It was just the first part of learning. Afterward, one of the teens, Tyrell, barely 15, tall and quiet, came up to him. You think someone like me could do what you did? Lucas smiled. No. Tyrell blinked. I think you could do more, Lucas added. Because you're starting younger. You've got time. You've got this place. And you've got people who believe in you. Tyrell grinned for the first time since Lucas met him. That evening, Lucas returned to the apartment, not the mansion, not a hotel, but the same small East LA unit where the real story had begun. He found Alicia on the couch, legs curled under her, reading. She looked up. So, how does it feel? Your big day. He sank beside her. You ever build something, and it's exactly what you pictured, but also more than you imagined? She nodded. It's called truth. They sat quietly. Lucas leaned his head back. You know what the best part is? What? I didn't do it for anyone. Not to impress. Not to fix my name. I did it because this is the life I want. She looked at him carefully. And is this the man you want to be? He nodded. Every single day. Alicia leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. And for a long moment, there was nothing but the quiet hum of streetlights outside and the warmth of a life built, not inherited. A life earned. Chapter 16. The Weight of Choice. The early morning light filtered softly through the blinds as Lucas sat at the small kitchen table, sipping his coffee. The apartment was still quiet, save for the faint hum of a distant lawnmower. His fingers drummed lightly against the ceramic mug as he stared at the phone screen. A message from his father. Can we talk? There are things I want to share. He hesitated before replying. When? And what about? Douglas's response was almost immediate. Tonight. At the house. Lucas's heart tightened. After months of rebuilding himself from the ground up, after embracing the new life and identity he had forged, the pull of his family's world still tugged at him, a reminder that the past was never fully behind him. That evening, Lucas drove the familiar route back to the Montgomery estate. The sleek black car he'd been lent by a family friend felt foreign beneath his hands, but he kept his grip steady. The house was immaculate as always, glowing warmly against the night sky. But tonight, the grand facade felt less like a sanctuary and more like a stage. Douglas greeted him at the door with a tentative smile. Thank you for coming, he said. Inside, the house was quiet. Elegant. Diana stood by the fireplace, her hands clasped. Lucas took a seat, the leather chair cool beneath him. Douglas began, There's something I need to tell you. Something that's been on my mind for a long time. Lucas nodded, bracing himself. I know the past months were hard. Harder than you realized. Douglas paused. But there's something I never told you before. The real reason we staged the bankruptcy. Lucas's eyes narrowed. Douglas continued, It wasn't just to teach you responsibility. It was also to protect you. Protect me? Lucas echoed. Douglas sighed. Our world is complicated and sometimes dangerous. The pressures, the expectations. We feared you were on a path that would break you completely. Lucas's jaw tightened. So you lied to me. Not to break you, Douglas said softly. To give you space to find yourself away from all of that. Lucas stared into the flickering flames. The weight of years pressing down. I found myself all right, he said quietly. And it wasn't in the world you built. Douglas nodded. And that's why I'm here. To ask if there's still a place for you in that world on your terms. Lucas exhaled, feeling the moment stretch. He realized then that this was no longer about the mansion or the name. It was about choice. His choice. Outside, the night air was cool and still. Lucas stepped onto the balcony, looking out over the city lights. His phone buzzed. A message from Alicia. Thinking of you. Proud of you. He smiled, typing back, thanks. I'm ready for what's next. And for the first time, the future felt not like a question, but a promise. Chapter 17. Bridging Two Worlds. Lucas walked through the grand halls of the Montgomery estate, the polished marble floors reflecting the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. Each step echoed with memories, some painful, some precious. The familiar scent of leather-bound books and polished wood filled the air, a stark contrast to the dusty tools and worn-out boots of his new life. Douglas met him in the study, offering a genuine smile. I thought we could talk about your future. Lucas nodded, taking a seat. I've been thinking about how to bridge what I've built with where I came from. Douglas leaned forward. We want to support you on your terms. The company is willing to offer you a position in community outreach, leveraging your experience with the breaker box. Lucas raised an eyebrow. You want me to help people like I've been helping? Yes. Your work has inspired many. We want to formalize it. For the first time. Lucas felt a sense of unity between his past and present. He smiled. I'm ready. Chapter 18. The Path Forward. Lucas sat across from his parents at the dining table, the evening light casting soft shadows on their faces. The conversation felt different now, honest, open, and filled with hope. I never thought I'd find my way back here, Lucas admitted. But I see now it's not about where I am, but who I've become. Diana smiled warmly. We're proud of you, Lucas. You've grown into a man we respect. Douglas nodded. And we're here to walk this path with you. Lucas took a deep breath. I want to keep building for myself, for my community, and for my family. The three of them raised their glasses in a quiet toast to new beginnings. Chapter 19. Unveiling the Truth. The conference room was filled with familiar faces, friends, colleagues, and family, all gathered for the official launch of the Breaker Box Foundation. Lucas stood at the podium, heart pounding with a mixture of pride and nerves. As he began to speak, he looked out into the crowd, locking eyes with his parents who sat in the front row, their expressions a blend of pride and humility. When I first lost everything, Lucas began. I thought my world was ending. But what I found was a new beginning, a chance to rebuild, not just a life, but a legacy rooted in resilience, honesty, and community. After the speech, Douglas took the stage, revealing the truth behind the staged bankruptcy and his and Diana's intentions. The crowd listened, moved by the story of a family who had sacrificed appearances to save their son from himself. Lucas stepped down, feeling lighter than ever. Chapter 20. A New Legacy. The sun set behind the city skyline, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple. Lucas stood on the balcony of his modest apartment, looking out over the neighborhood he had come to call home. Behind him, the soft murmur of celebration from the launch party for the Breaker Box Foundation echoed through the open window. Laughter, music, and the warmth of community filled the air. Lucas took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the journey behind him and the promise of the future ahead. His phone buzzed, a message from his parents. We are proud of the man you've become. This is just the beginning. He smiled, typing back. Thank you for trusting me to find my own path. Together, we build something real. As night fell, Lucas turned back inside, ready to face tomorrow, not as a spoiled heir, but as a man who earned his place in the world.